Colin, thank you. Welcome everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about a topic I'm both experienced and passionate about, which is really this data transformation in a digital world. So first of all, I want to provide some context. So this is what we're all faced with in our businesses and our organizations. So the contemporary business strategy is driving towards some version generally of a customer experience vision. What you see is that it's driving towards an ambition of individual interaction at scale. Everybody have a personalized, connected, happy customer experience, and you've got millions of customers. You've got this scale customer base. And how do we set up to do that? We're also very much living in a digital world. And my context around, or a definition around digital world, is that it's tremendously connected. So always on 24/7. From the customers or from external perspective, there's a real-time engagement expectation. So you need to be ready to go with your interactions. There's an expanding channel universe. So digital, physical, people assisted. And I think it's very much more than this concept around omni-channel. If you even break down digital, digital is it's not one, mobile, web, the social media channels, etc. They're just expanding at a never-ending rate. So you've got this expanding channel universe combined with a liquid interaction. So people dipping in and out between channels to complete journey. And they also stop and start at different times. So they don't complete necessarily an onboarding or an acquisition experience or a customer complaint or a customer follow-up all in one. They'll dip in and out, stop and start whenever they feel like it. And again, like I said before, you're driving towards this customer experience centric one-to-one vision beyond segmentation. Segmentation still remains important, but you're driving beyond that to true one-to-one. And it's data rich and data driven. So that's your digital world. And it's really around transforming our data sets and our data approach to really enable this at the scale that we operate with in our businesses. Now, if we then take a look at where we are with our typical data environments, or the legacy or history of where we're coming from a data perspective, I like to talk about evolving the data strategy so that it's fit for purpose and that you rebalance, evolve, reprioritize from inherently what is a compliance reporting paradigm around data to more of the thinking around that experience paradigm. So let's unpack this. And what do I mean about this? So that compliance reporting paradigm, it's historical. You're looking at data from the past or events that are being confirmed from a past perspective, heavily structured around products or financial. How many products did I sell? How much revenue did I earn in this period? What were the sales? And because of that, there's a drive around the perfection. So it's really a one and a zero. It has to be this or that because you're looking at it particularly from a financial numbers perspective. And that also leads to this historical piece where you're in a monthly reporting cycle. So you need to effectively wait until you've done all your reconciliations and washouts for that monthly period to end. Like I said, it's reactive. Often it's siloed or fragmented and heavily controlled. So it sits in a channel, it sits around a platform. There's data all over the place. It's heavily controlled by people and there's a lot of manual intervention. So even though it's generated from platforms and software, often there's a lot of need for people to ship it, to move it, to report on it, to analyze on it. And it's not that that world is going to go away, it's that it needs to evolve into this experience paradigm. And what I described there, if you unpack that around, there's more of an emphasis on timely data, particularly some components or attributes of the data being shipped around on a real-time basis. It's unstructured, it's messy. Web logs, customer contact center call logs, they're not typically perfect at any stretch of the imagination. So you need to be able to handle them, or your systems certainly need to handle them. Moving to a journey or an interaction or an event basis, because they provide important signals as to what customers is happening right now and also what they might want to do. I value usability, so not perfection, but right enough that it's usable. You're moving to a world where you're much more around proactive or preemptive, looking forward, an ecosystem of data. So all your internal platforms, sharing data and moving data around, and also sharing and moving and interacting from a data perspective with external data sets and external parties. Also looking to democratize it, so much more self-service throughout the organization, because data is really important for everybody in the organization to understand where you are, what you're doing, how well you're doing with your activity. And then also, if we think around that digital world, we're always on 24/7. Customers will interact with us through any of our channels at any point in time, should they choose to. It's around machine-to-machine automated. So understanding that your primary data interactions will move from more of the manual interventions or manual-centric way that it's happening often in an organization to machines, talking to machines, platforms, talking to other platforms, artificial intelligence, driving activity, and you need to set up for that. So we talked about that data strategy piece there, evolving. What I want to talk about here is around also your technical data architecture, your architecture from a technical perspective. I'll come to a slide around the business thinking needs to progress as well. You'll have no doubt some version of the left-hand side where you have this channel-centric model of data or platform-centric model of data where data is tended. If one system or channel or function needs the data, they do a point integration to that platform or system and bring it back in. And a lot of the thinking driving this was around incrementalism. So you often start with a single primary channel. You design your business around that single primary channel. It could be digital only, it could be physical only, so a store, retail presence. And then incrementally you add another channel, another channel, another capability. And before you know it, what happens is you've lost this flexibility around how you bring channels in, and you realize that it's not an incremental add-on anymore, that you have to almost step back and go, we're just going to have channels, new channels come to us. They start off as experimental or low usage. Then, hey presto, they become material. They become material to our most valuable customers. So thinking more around this standardization around how we do that. Also, this concept around a centralized aggregation zone or a centralized data platform, because each of your platforms need to not only, if you like, feed the data into that platform, but they have to make use of it. In your contact center channel, the fact that the customer has been sent an email, but then how they've, for an offer or a product or a customer service message or a branding message, and then what they've done with it, more importantly. So have they opened it or have they left it sitting for a month? Provides important context, and all the platforms interact. So there's much more of this interaction and you can call it a hub and spoke or a centralized model. But you can see on the right-hand side, there's this concept around an aggregated data platform where all of your organizational business essentially feeds in and out of that. And because you use then standards and patterns around how you move data, ship data, ingest data, the mappings of the data, naming conventions, the attributes that are important, it becomes relatively, so we're all been in data environment. So it's when I say easy, it's all about a relative easy to move and add new channel functionality in or new platform functionality in and out relative to what it is when you're in this bespoke integration, bespoke shipping model around data. The one on the right can also be made much more robust. So you're designing here for this always-on automation, and you make the decisions about your pipelines, fancy word for ETLs if you like, that can sustain the operating model appropriately. We also then talk about evolving your business data architecture, so how you're set up. So again, moving from a world of variable channel governance, security and privacy added on, to consistent enterprise governance, security and privacy, and you build that in from the start. Security policies and frameworks need to cover all your touch points and all parts of your business when it comes to data. Similarly with privacy, particularly with the way that the privacy regulations globally and in Australia are moving, where there's much more of an emphasis around customer ownership or co-ownership of data and being able to, if you like, right to be forgotten, elements around privacy and spam and things like that. You need consistent frameworks. There's a move away from what I'd say, or evolving from fragmented resourcing. So people, capability being centered around platforms and channels, to more an integrated community of resources where you can balance or load balance your resourcing to better suit what the business outcomes that you're driving towards and the customer experience that you want to deliver. And then the last one is around this, moving from this cottage industry to an operating model to more of an industrial factory operating model. So again, this part around standards and patterns and reuse, moving from a world where every group of data analysts or data scientists does their own calculations for different attributes, for example, for age, to one centralized collective benefit calculation, having different versions of customer lifetime value models sitting in different parts of your business to aggregating down to one enterprise model. So again, thinking very much more around, I'm setting up to a big factory, how do I organize there and have the flexibility to do that? But there's much more around just looking at that big picture rather than being caught in a channel platform centric mode where you just resource that up. I think governance is important here as well to stop a proliferation of data platforms. Often vendors will come and their context around, if you like, talking about customer experience might be one part of the customer lifecycle. So it might be acquisition focused. And you see some of that around customer data platforms where it's put into an acquisition. The teams that do a lot around Google and Facebook interaction or programmatic interaction, but it's that platform itself is then separated away from other parts of the business that might want to use much of the same data, but they want to look at it from an intention, engagement, loyalty perspective. So again, that governance really needed to be put in place. And data truly being embedded as part of your end-to-end. So when we're driving towards machine learning, when we're driving towards artificial intelligence, we need automated connected feedback loops for the automated learning of your portfolio of artificial intelligence. And what becomes really important is this concept around how your customers respond tunes the rightness of your predictive and your automated modeling in your artificial intelligence. What I mean by that is you move beyond just if the customer does what we want, that's a yes, a thumbs up, that's great, to if the customer does a yes or a no or a neutral, that's a signal for how right we've got our predictiveness or our preemptive and proactive modeling. And that needs to be fed back in an automated connected learning loop so that our artificial intelligence capability can learn how right it was and tune appropriately. If you want to move from, and why do you want to do that amongst other things? Part of it is so that the machines can develop, your artificial intelligence can develop new predictive models or new automated AI capability themselves. And if you want to move into things like adaptive learning so that you don't have, constraints within resourcing, say from a data science perspective. So you want to have a small data science team, not hundreds of data scientists because you can't afford them, but you want the benefits of, a rich portfolio of predictive models. Well, the machines have to be able to learn themselves and develop new models with the appropriate governance and controls around that. And it's these automated learning loops, which again are really important. And typically, there are gaps in some of your channels around having this fully automated learning loop in place. It gets broken. And often it's about, it's stuck in almost a campaigning kind of methodology where you send an interaction out. And then if the customer responds, that's great. But then that's about the size, the length of the information. It's around developing these loops. So everything is passed around and everything is a learning opportunity. The piece then I want to talk about is not one data component. It's this portfolio of data components that together deliver a best practice data platform. So it's more than a data lake by itself. A data lake should be part of your data platform, but it by itself is not enough. So you'll see a range of zones or capabilities or components on this slide, which is really, you could almost tick them off or mark them within the kind of data platform that you want to build towards. a lot of emphasis there to, enable a business agility around this shared library of features or calculations, this shared portfolio of predictive models of data engineering patterns, these small things around standardization of names, terms, and definitions, which make a real difference in the ability to roll data through and be able to democratize it and for different groups to use it or different teams for different purposes. I think I'll put a lot of emphasis here around the customer analytical record, the customer profile, combined with your enterprise interaction history, because that to me is really like a movie around everything that a customer has been doing, like all the interactions with your organization, and you can play it backwards and forwards. And it's a rich signal of where they are, what's important to them, what's relevant to them, where they are on their customer journey when you match it, when you map it back. But certainly these are all the kinds of components that you would be looking for. I'll probably just then, I guess, open up for any questions around this slide.
Hi, Simon. I've got a question because we're currently undergoing a very similar journey. With the hub and spoke and this side, I find the biggest challenge is understanding where that source of truth ultimately will be, because yes, you want to have a single source of truth, but as you're integrating with multiple systems are updated by multiple teams. Those multiple teams have different integrations. Those integrations have data coming in at different points in time. And then you've got self-service reporting and self-service requirements or visualization requirements. So how do you manage ensuring that the single source of truth, for a lack of a better word, is actually the right information? And as you sync information out of that repository to the other sources of information, which one is correct and who makes that decision?
Oh, that's a great one. You mean going through the devil in the detail or all the skeletons in your data infrastructure? So one is around tooling for auditability, right? So ensuring that every piece of data that gets shipped from point A to point B makes it to point B. So there's tooling around that. I think and the more interesting one for you is around how do you get organizational alignment that the value or the attribute at that point in time of that, let's call it that what you've described, where you potentially are picking it up from different data points. How do you coalesce on that? And I think that's a challenge around, I think, starting with, you have to operate from the collective good. Yeah. So if we're going to benefit from a cost, operational, organizational efficiency and effectiveness point of view going forward, then we need to align on, a smaller number or a singular place where we take that data, right? And that's going to be what we consider the source of truth. So it's having the patience to work through that, because somebody has to change, right? That's what it will often mean. There'll be somebody's calculation or somebody's report or some piece of code somewhere that will need to be changed and updated to support that model. I think you need to look at it as a transition and a long-running transition, and just be as resilient as you can and working through understanding what you're driving to. But I feel your pain, because for a whole lot of historical legacy reasons, you've got whole different variations that you have to work through, right? And we're not even talking about different vendors.
No, not at all.
No, that's why the understanding the bigger picture becomes so important, because otherwise you just get lost in that busyness of the pain and suffering at the detail level, right? Because it's pain and suffering. You need that overall vision and that importance of the architecture, and not get caught up in the sins of the past because of what you're working to. But yeah, it's a painful, long-standing process. I think the other part there is to understand that if you don't begin this journey now, then you're simply delaying it, and or it will become more complex as time goes by, because you keep feeding in systems and other things and kind of band-aiding over the top. So, but yeah, it's tough.
Thanks for validating. It's going to be a long and painful journey. I was hoping you'd have some silver bullet insights.
Well, the silver bullet insight, I think, is around that keeping that aspiration and ambition. We can talk more probably offline, or if you want as a follow-up, because then you're around, the capability of people and picking through that. Perhaps the one magic you have is a version of a greenfield and starting, rather than evolving, if you have the opportunity, rather than starting or evolving your existing historical reporting compliance paradigm piece, if you like, building the experience, data, architecture, infrastructure, and then, if you like, doing what you need to do the reporting compliance, because it will handle that. It's just that where do you start? I'd propose you start with the experience paradigm infrastructure and then upgrade its capability to handle your reporting and your compliance components. But yeah, if you start at the other end, it's a long transition.
Okay, thanks, Simon.
Okay, what I want to put up there here on this slide is there's a range of use cases. These are examples that deliver these better experiences and more value. I think what's really important to understand is they're sharing or leveraging much of the same data set coming out of that data platform. They're taking a different slice, or they're taking they're using some upweighting something versus other things, but they're essentially it's all the same data. And really what you drive down towards, if you want to sum up, is that line on the bottom around it's always on 24/7 one-to-one engagement. And you're using data to drive amplification of the right interaction engagement with each and every one of those customers, prioritization of the experience. And what I mean by that, if it's a fixed capacity, then your high value customers get driven into that capability first, or you might prioritize the experience. So more valuable customers get a person contacting them versus lower value customers having to go to digital self-service. And then also suppression. So I like to say suppression of activity, the wrong activity at the wrong time, shouldn't be underestimated. So there's an example there where automated suppression based on data points around, you suppress, for example, sales activity when a customer is in a moment of truth. So they're in a complaints process or they've got a payments issue. And what that acts is, first of all, you capture that data point. And then if you have other activity going on that might cause a negative experience to a customer. So for example, you're in a complaints process and then you get something around, oh, buy this or upsell this or right sell this or etc. Is that it's automatically suppressed. And more importantly, you can even get to a stage where you magnify customer service communication and branding communication to that customer at the all the channel touch points at the same time. So that becomes really important around this engagement. Data-driven amplification, prioritizing and suppression at scale. I wanted to wrap up, if you wanted to say some top takeaways from what I've talked about today. I'd really encourage people to, within their architecture and their platforms, to build this timely machine-to-machine consumption and include those connected feedback loops for automated learning. They set you up for, let's call it, the full suite of capability that sits within the artificial intelligence portfolio. Even if you start at the earlier end around response triggers and predictive models, because that's how the machines learn. If you have these connected feedback loops, the machines learn how right they are and they improve themselves. So it's around setting up for that and understanding that. Design in that enterprise governance, security and privacy from the start as much as you can, or extend the boundaries around governance, security and privacy as early as you can, and have a consistency around those frameworks and that all the groups understand what they are and how they operate. And to think about that for running this cost effectively at enterprise scale, really operationalize and think of it as a factory model capability. So how do I run this as a factory? It's an automated, we have lots of capability going on. We need to join it, align it, and run it for the benefit of the collective. And so we take every opportunity to have an alignment, standardization, patterns for approach so we can operate that factory model at scale. That's it. Thank you to everybody.
Thanks, Simon, especially, and thanks everyone for attending.